Right. Well, we are welcome everybody into the Works Without You podcast. You'll see in a second why we are putting it in the podcast rather than just a standalone video. But I was excited. I invited Harry Welby Cooke, who's based in Cape Town, and Works Without You is really close to his heart because for those of you that haven't met Harry, he's the guy that brought Action Coach business coaching into South Africa 16, 17 years ago now. And what we're all about is building profitable businesses that work without you. So some cool stuff to have straight from the horse's mouth. But Harry, in case I do a bad job, do you mind just introducing yourself for anybody that hasn't met you?
Yeah, sure, Trevor. Yeah, good to see all of you all. My name's Harry Welby Cooke, or just plain Harry. People look at the surname and go, "Oh, geez, where are you from?" From Welkom in the Free State. So, born and bred in the Free State. Had a commercial banking career, and used to lend people money, and saw that hardworking, passionate, wonderful people never ever made it work out according to the business plan. And I think, looking back, that probably sparked the journey for what we get to do every day today. But as Trevor said, 17 years ago, in 2007, I'd already left corporate at that stage, brought Action Coach to South Africa. And yeah, 17 and a half years later, we have a passion for business. We have a passion for helping others. And I think we are privileged enough to get to see that impact in the most important industry in the world, I think, and that's business ownership and entrepreneurship. So really looking forward to this podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for making the time, Harry. Yeah, for those of you that know us well, Harry's got one of the toughest jobs in the world. He doesn't just coach business owners, he coaches coaches, and we're a different kettle of fish in our own right too. Yeah, so 15 years we've been working together, and it's been great being part of this journey of building the business in South Africa. So the reason I asked Harry onto the call today was he joined us, it was May, we were doing our quarterly planning session where we get a bunch of clients together and review the goals plans for the quarter. We'd flown Harry in as our guest speaker, and he was just sharing some really incredible content that a lot of our clients that couldn't make it for the day, I was quite sad for them because they missed out on the content Harry was sharing. It was just really powerful. It was exactly what everybody needed to hear. And Harry and I are actually busy planning for the November planning day and November goal setting event that we're going to be co-hosting on I stand corrected, the 21st of November. And I thought, let's take a quick opportunity just to do a summary or the abridged highlights of the content that Harry was sharing, because it's something we all needed to hear at the time. And it's actually still something that's highly relevant right now. So Harry's agreed to kind of give us the 15, 20-minute summary. And it's a key message to sit and take notes. It's a little wake-up call that a lot of us need to hear quite regularly. So Harry, thanks for sharing that. And then we'll share with you what we have in mind for November. But without further ado, Harry, we're in your hands, and look forward to hearing the thoughts that are on your mind.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Yeah, so just a little bit of context to this passionate subject of mine. I grew up in the Free State. My father was a fitter and turner, and sadly he's been retrenched many times over. And now in his 70s, effectively still needs to work and can't find work. And we have this mindset in South Africa. As I also matriculated in 1994, which, as you know, was an interesting year for South Africa. And we've got this mindset that the grass is always greener elsewhere. And, woe is me, my kids are living overseas, and, the economy is so bad, and, it's so much easier everywhere else. And I'm in the privileged position that that's absolute bollocks. I regard myself as the most proudly South African person I know, and I can say that, and I can share these things with you because I've had a brother that's lived in the UK for 26 years. He's been in the UK longer than he's been in South Africa. I've got a brother that became an American citizen last year. And I too have two kids working overseas, one in the Bahamas at the moment, and the other one's busy crossing the Atlantic, going from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean. And Action Coach is a global organization, so we operate in 80 countries around the world. So between my own family, between my own kids, between the business, and with the benefit of being able to travel, I get to see the world maybe differently than most South Africans do. And I can tell you that we still live on the best place on the planet. And my kids in particular, They're both in the super yachting industry. They go to places that most mere mortals would never see, because it's the elite of the elite. And they can't wait to come back to South Africa, and they think it's so awesome here. And when I did this talk for Trevor at his growth club with his clients, it was in May, and I'd just come back from a 2-week trip in the UK. Just after that, in July, we were celebrating our 31st anniversary of Action Coach globally, and I was in Croatia, Greece, Italy, all in the space of, again, about 3 weeks. And I remember sitting at our cultural evening. So at Global Conference in Croatia, every global conference, we have a cultural evening, and we have some local dancers and local food and all the rest of it. And a friend of mine from San Diego said, "Come quickly. We must go take a photo." And I was a bit startled, and I thought, well, what, where? Okay, what? And he said, "The sunset, how quickly the sunset sets, we must go take a picture of the sunset." And I said, well, okay, but why? He said, these are the most beautiful sunsets in the world, and you're sitting here and not even noticing. And I said, with the greatest respect, Scott, the sunsets are better out my backyard. And most places you go in South Africa, you'll have a better sunset than that. And he looked at me with such disdain, and he said, "Yes, but we all know that you're a bloody spoiled South African. Get up your ass and come and take a photo," which I then did. But that, and a lot of what I'm going to share with you, is stuff that we don't realize. It's so easy to listen to the media. It's so easy to listen to our mates. It's so easy to see people living overseas, and of course social media, and we don't see the true reality of what's going on literally on our doorstep. So let me take you through just some of the I call it the reality check, because yes, we have got this unequal society. And I love it when people say, "Oh, the most unequal society in the world." And go, well, I've been walking in around Harrods in the UK, where people are living on a cardboard box in the pavement. I've been in America, where it's the mecca of the free world, and there's people begging. So we have it everywhere. But let's look at some reality. Now, we think that everybody's left the country and there's nobody left, and maybe I should be the same person thinking of going. And sadly, if you're a little bit older, you even tell your kids this. Because my father said this to me a few times. He says, "Oh, Harry, if you ever get the opportunity to leave, don't stay because of us." I'm going, well, I'd rather not be anywhere. And when I said that once at a talk at a financial services company breakfast, there was a elderly guy that came up at the end of the room, and he said, "I feel embarrassed. I'm that dad encouraging my kids to leave." So let's look at that and see, well, so many South Africans living overseas. It's less than 70% of the population of Gqeberha, old PE. There's only 800,000 people, 880,000 South Africans living overseas. Now, if you went and checked how many Americans are living in other countries, how many British people are living in other countries, just find similar percentages. We've just caught on to the bandwagon late. People in the first world have been living in other countries for many, many, many decades already, because they moved for opportunity. Now, yes, some South Africans leave because they're running away, but many leave for opportunity. And I've got friends and family that have done that. I also know many people that have left because they thought they were running away, and they've come back. And a few, sadly, that are stuck that would love to come back. But it's not the millions we think it is. So, if you look at PE in this tiny little hollow and you think, geez, PE doesn't even feature on the map, that's nothing in relation to the amount of people that we still have here that are committed to making a future. And of course, if you look at this, don't worry about all the numbers. You'll see us kind of bottom right for the largest economies in the world. Of course, we would want to be on the left-hand column and halfway up. But if you look at some of the countries around us and you think of, how long some of them have been first world countries, how much earlier they started their industrialification, the changeover from other regimes and things they've had, we pretty much still, hitting it up there with the big boys. And, this was 2023's figures. So, Nigeria's come down, and we're back to being the number one largest African economy, which, if we look at Africa being the next big thing, what everybody proposes to be, we're still geared pretty well for that. But despite the fact that our economy is kind of top 30-ish, we're top 15, 16 biggest stock exchanges in the world. And that's after we keep hearing these stories around big companies delisting, big companies having dual listings in Europe and in South Africa. If you look at Australia and the size of their economy, in fact, let's just go back there to show you, $1.7 trillion compared to our 400 billion. Our stock exchanges are almost the same size. Geez, that's quite interesting. China, that's a significantly bigger market than ours, both in population, obviously, and size of economy. They're only double the size of our stock exchange, which, is something to think about. Who would have ever thought we would have seen South Africa on the fastest growing economies list? And it's not that 1.2% is great shakes. It's not at all. But the reality is the world has been under pressure the last few years. In a year of elections, any country goes into a little bit of wait and see mode. And the world has had over 50 democratic elections this year already, with the really big one, the Americans, still to come. So despite the fact that we're not growing that brilliantly, there are not many countries ahead of us on the growth trajectory at all. Then we look at inflation and go, okay, well, inflation in South Africa is managed through the Reserve Bank, whether you like it or not, and it's relatively stable. Despite the changes in the economy and COVID and all those kind of things, we keep inflation in that band, and it's pretty stable. That's not the same that the rest of the world can say. And even first world countries are being crippled. That's why we've seen changes of government in the UK. That's why they're proposing a change of government in the States, is because there's runaway price increases and inflation, something they're not used to. And if you look at some of those at the bottom of the screen, the highest inflation around the world, and you look at some of these countries, you'd think, well, those are typically our peers in the third world developing market. Our inflation has never, ever been at those levels. But let's look at wages, let's look at salaries and think, well, South Africa, we mass market, uneducated, highly unemployed, and people would argue unemployable. I've got a different view about that. And you look at average salaries and you think, well, there's some really heavyweight first world market countries that the averages, yes, are more than us, but that's a direct exchange rate conversion. It's a lot cheaper to live in South Africa. And I think that's the part that a lot of people forget. They go, oh, but if you're earning dollars, it's brilliantly. Yes, but you're spending in dollars. If you're earning in pounds, you're spending in pounds. Now, here's the reality still in South Africa. Whilst we do have, a lot of unemployed people, most middle class and upper middle class families are single income earners still. Well, you won't find that in the first world. Even wealthy families are dual income families. Many in countries where we say, oh, we'd love to have the public transport infrastructure that they have, they don't have cars or have one car per family. We still have 2 cars, and sometimes as your kids grow up, maybe even a 3rd car. So the price parity and our buying power is actually significantly higher. And despite the fact that we think we've had this runaway population growth, if you look at the decline of global birth rates, the increase of global birth rates, it's come down all around the world. And from the 1950s to now, even South Africa's rate of growth has come down by over 50%, which if you look at our peers in that group is pretty much what you'd be expecting. Now these are stats, these are figures. This is not what the media is telling me, what my mates are saying to me at a braai. This is the reality of what's going on. And again, if you look at the most indebted countries around the world, we don't feature there. Even as a percentage debt to GDP, we are not in anywhere near the most indebted countries in the world, which from a long-term stability and growth perspective really set us up for success. And if you think it's better in other countries, look at this from the last 8 years perspective. The increase or decrease, sadly, per capita income. France is going backwards. Italy's going backwards. Japan's going backwards. Brazil's going backwards. The UK is going backwards. Germany's flat. Yes, we would expect China and Russia to be increasing, China and India, sorry, because of their growth rates. But the rest of the world, not so great. And in fact, ours has gone up significantly in that same period. We don't feature on the most stressed countries in the world. We don't feature on the most suicides of any age group in the world. We have some of the lowest mental health percentages of population to especially first world countries. Well, this is almost against what our perception is. And I actually said it Monday morning in our staff meeting, I said it's amazing how no hurricanes, no major earthquakes, no wars, no real terrorism, all the problems that they have in the first world and is currently happening in many countries around the world, we just don't have. Now, if you look at the debt levels of established countries, countries that we would think, oh, what we'd like to be like a Japan, maybe 260% debt to GDP. Singapore, many of these countries have funded their expansion through just pure and simple taking on debt, which is easy to do, but then needs to be paid back. And let's look at some of the numbers, how countries pay this back. So don't worry about this, it's a bit small. Let me zoom it in a little bit. If you look at some of the lowest fuel taxes per gallon, dollar per gallon in the world, you'll find South Africa near the top of the list, and that's the lowest taxes. Now, the government's already talking about how do we reduce taxes and bring fuel down even lower. But let's look at the bottom of that list. So the most expensive taxes, dollars per gallon. Those are all the other countries that are funding debt, all the first world countries. Petrol is significantly more expensive in the countries that you supposedly want to move to and go live in. Let's look at VAT rates. Now, these are the VAT rates in the UK, not South Africa. We're 15%. They've been at a 20% VAT rate for the last 13 years. And I think next week is budget speech, maybe end of this week or next week, budget speech for the UK. And they're thinking, increased taxes, maybe increased VAT, probably increased employment taxes, unemployment insurance fund increases, etc., etc. We're not at 20%. We're at 15%. We almost had a heart attack when we went from 14 to 15% many, many years ago. This is the astounding one for me. Because no matter how big my business is, or your business is, or anybody's business is, we pay 1% on behalf of the employee, 1% on our behalf as the employer, 2% towards UIF with a cap. If you look at the UK, and most people in the UK, the average salary is higher than £962 or euros, you're paying 13.8% UIF for the employer. Like, hello, that's just crazy compared to 1%. And at that certain threshold, you pay 25% of the salary to UIF. So if you want, some of the perceived benefits, then pay the highest tax in fuel in the world. Pay 20% or more in VAT. Pay 25% UIF unemployment insurance. and then you can have those spoils. But I had to take this photo. This was actually as I was leaving on the last day from my UK trip. I stayed there for a couple of days. That's a place that my brother and his partner recently bought. Now, I'm not 100% sure what they paid for it, and I did look in the streets to get a benchmark of the price. That little home is 7 meters wide. So as you go into the stairs there on the door, you go up, there's a little passage, and you go up the stairs in multiple levels. And the one window is the living area, dining room, and kitchen. And then so it goes up the different levels. The scaffolding you see, excuse me, on the right in your picture, that's the next home already. The scaffolding on the other side, next to the door, is also the next home. So that narrow little base. Now, you are looking at around £1.2 million for that home. It's a listed building, so anything you try and do to it, including painting the cast iron fencing outside, requires permission, certain special paints, results in more money, all the rest of it. But just to give you a ballpark, that 3-bedroom, and it's called a 3-bedroom, but the one room we joked and said it's Harry Potter living in the closet because it's downstairs, and it was me. And it felt like the closet because the bed folds out the wall. And when the bed is down, you cannot move around the bed. And then you push the bed back up. So Harry Potter in his closet. So that's one of the 3 rooms. 1.5 bathrooms, let's call it that. And, one could say 2 living areas, but the one is a living area and the one is more like a landing for a study. But that's what you're in for. So I thought, well, let's benchmark that. What can you get for the same amount of money? And here on Property 24, at the same time, you get a 6-bedroom house in De Zalze in Stellenbosch for 28 million. That's the pricing parity. Now, even though you might be paying 4% insurance, 4% interest versus 12% or 11% interest, you still don't comprehend. And you could go pay 150 Rand for a warm beer. We had beef Wellington the one day and 125 grams worth of steak. 125 grams worth of steak that went into the beef fillet worked out to about 350 Rand per person.
And you haven't even mentioned the blue sky above the roof, rather.
Oh no, of course.
Is there a premium there?
This day was probably the best weather they had the whole of April.
A
tiny little bit of blue sky there in the UK, but that's what it's going to look like most of the time. So, I know Simon Sinek made the question why very important, and start with why and ask why. Well, let's change it on its head a little bit. Instead of asking why you should leave, or why not ask yourself, why not stay? Why not appreciate what we've got around us? Why not build a business instead of worrying about what the politicians are doing and what everybody else is doing? Why not just focus on you and what you need to do? Because here's the reality. I love the scenario of politics because everybody gets their knickers in a knot around politics. So it doesn't matter if you're in America, in the UK, in South Africa earlier this year, once the elections are done, who is putting more money in your bank account listening to this today? The reality is nobody. It doesn't matter what politician is there, what they do, whether we agree with it, whether we don't, whether we like them, whether we don't. Nobody puts more money into my bank account. And KZN for me is always I've got a soft spot for KZN because when I grew up in the Free State, the company my father worked for, there was the boss had a holiday house in Munster down on the south coast. So most holidays we ended up going there, and we moved around KZN a bit. And I traveled and worked there when I was with Standard Bank. I love KZN, and South Africa is a roller coaster ride, but KZN may be even worse. We've had rioting and flooding and looting and you name it. Yet every single time I come to KZN, which is a few times a year, So it's not like I've been away for multiple years and then I arrive. A few times a year, I see new roads being built, new infrastructure being built, new buildings that have gone up. And the other day, when we were in Durban at the Pencil Club for one of our franchise meetings, looking down, 17 years ago, when I launched Action Coach in South Africa, the Sharks board was there, Gateway Shopping Centre was there, and that was pretty much it. And look what it looks like today. You only have to look at, yes, the delays are irritating in the port. Look at the activity around Durban's port. So the roller coaster of life will happen. The roller coaster of your health will happen. Your relationships will happen. Your finances will happen. And for hell, your business too. But what I want to leave you with is the fact that both these people are on the same roller coaster. They paid the same for their ticket of life. They're going through exactly the same experience. One is having the worst day of their life, and the other's having the best. So what I want all South Africans to think about is stop worrying about what's happening elsewhere, and rather be like this little Jack Russell, excited about where you're going and having fun to get there. Because without a shadow of a doubt, this is the reality. The only people that will make a better South Africa are business owners. Now, yes, business owners need staff. So as a team within your business, obviously it will include you and your management and your staff. But business owners are only people that can fix anything, because it's going to take money to fix our problems. Yes, a little bit less stealing would help, but we don't have enough money. If the politicians stopped stealing every last cent that they take, we still wouldn't balance our budget. If you look at the average amount of money spent on healthcare, the average amount of money spent on education, it's a joke. You get nothing for that. And it was fascinating. I tell the story all the time. And my father was listening to me having this conversation with somebody at a braai the other day. And I said, well, South Africans, we love to complain. I think as humans, we love to complain, because they complain in Europe, they complain in America, they complain in the UK. Humans like to complain. But let's talk about some of South Africa's fundamental problems. Education. Most of us are privileged to send our kids to damn good schools that are better today than they were in 1994, whether they're private or the good old Model C schools. We complain about healthcare. People leave South Africa, go overseas, and then fly home to South Africa to do their operations and stuff, because we go to Life or Netcare or Mediclinic for our healthcare. We complain about security. Well, yes, if you fly, the bird flies maybe 5 kilometers from my house, you've got Khayelitsha, and more people are murdered there every single weekend than when we have a big disaster in the world. I leave my doors open. I don't ever lock the back of the house. The bicycle stands outside. So we have secured ourselves so that that's not an issue. We buy at Woolworths, people. Food at Woolworths. Many first world countries around the world don't have a Woolworths equivalent food like we do. So what are we complaining about? So, Trevor wanted me to share this message with you, and we're going to do more of this obviously in November, because we are committed to helping you build a bigger, better business that makes you proper money, so that filters into different areas of the world and the economy and your staff and your bank account and your family and your charities and all the rest of it. And then let's structure it so it works without you. So if that's exciting for you, then best you listen to what we have in store.
Harry, thanks for the reality check. And yeah, just as relevant now as it was a couple of months ago, I think, because back then it was May, it was all the build up to the elections and that stress, because we always go in those, I love the analogy of the roller coaster. That's South Africa. I mean, the brain drain, the immigration's been an issue. There used to always be that joke, last person to leave, turn out the lights, but that was back in the 1990s, and people leave and people come back. Obviously, there was the election build-up. Then we had our government of national unity, or GNU, or we have. So everybody's calm, and now suddenly that's all an uproar again. And so everybody's going, oh my gosh, when does this roller coaster stop? And I think that's the reality, is it's a roller coaster. And when the ride finishes, you do it again because it's fun. So I think for me, that's just the lovely message, is that's why we did it in the podcast rather than a separate interview. Is it's a profitable business that works without you. So guys, that's what it's all about. Imagine being able to have all the great stuff of the lifestyle benefits of living in South Africa, but have surplus income that, regardless of the exchange rate, to say, well, then we can still enjoy international travel and visiting other countries and all those lovely toys and the lovely benefits that come with business ownership if we're getting both of those things right. So profits up, but importantly, the business working without you so that you've got the time to free that up. So last message here, as Harry and I mentioned, we've got our next event coming up on 21st of November. It's our goal setting planning day, last opportunity for this year. So the main message, guys, is do not wrap up 2024 unless you have a plan in place for 2025, because trust me, your competitors are doing some planning. So our job is there to help you facilitate it. So if you already have a business plan in place and you want a second pair of eyes and put yourself in a room with a great group of business owners, Harry and I are going to facilitate the whole day of helping you relook at the plan. Are they the right goals that you're chasing? And have you got a solid plan to help you achieve those goals? And to those of you that haven't got the plan in place and think, oh my gosh, I should be doing some planning, well, carve out a day in the diary. We can just, like pulling a plaster, just get it all done in one day, and make sure that you really have something solid so you can then have your break at the end of the year. And then when you get back from for some of you in retail and hospitality, I know it's a crazy busy time, and others are going to be shutting down and recharging. Whatever the case is, let's make sure you're ready to really hit the ground running with some big goals. And Harry, if you don't mind, just as we wrap, you get some good idea. We're still tweaking the agenda for the day, but it's about business unusual. And let's do some, not just rinse and repeat. And that's going to be our topic for November, is not rinse and repeat. Let's do it bigger, better in particular. But Harry, any closing words for anybody that's thinking about joining us in November for the event?
Yeah, so even those that might be listening that think they have goals and plans, bring them to the session and we'll show you how you've got no idea. Because I think most of us go through life, especially as adults, and rinse and repeat. It's copy and paste. It's the next year, it's the same thing. And New Year's resolutions don't last, and we repeat the same mistakes. Here's the reality. Your business is the vehicle to serve you and your goals, your dreams, your aspirations for yourself and your family. And whilst it is, looking at the last quarter is disruptive. It's December, January, February. We've got Christmas, New Year, back to school, kids on holiday, start of the end of the financial year. It's chaos. So that day, we're not just going to look at the last quarter so that you at least finish strong. For most of you, your financial year in maybe 28 February. But have clarity around a really compelling and exciting year that you want to build for 2025. Because whether you're going into busy season or you're going into downtime, you want to have planned 2025 and be excited about it so that you can go rest. Or if you are manic because it's season for you, that you're not worried about that, because come January, you want to be ready to go. And I'll leave you with this, because this is how we go about business in South Africa. And I'm already seeing it in October. So October, Christmas decorations have started going up at Checkers, and soon they'll be riding around delivering our food with their pink little suits or red suits instead of the blue ones. Yeah. So October's a little disruptive. November, we got Christmas year-end parties, and we kind of slowing down. We even use those words, slowing down November.
Yeah. Yep.
December is a half month, if we're lucky. January, it takes a while to get going, until kids are back to school, nothing really happens. Well, that's the end of January, just about. Then we're into February, and it's the shortest month in the year, and it's end of financial year, and we're kind of picking up the lag of a tough December and bonuses and things like that. March is financial year. We got the accountants on our back, all the rest of it. April's a nightmare because we've got short month, all the public holidays. It's been the same for 30 years, but it catches us every year. May, we're happy to work. May is a full month, no distractions. We're going to push hard. June, the weather's turning, school holidays again. We're going hunting, fishing, whatever the case may be. July is a little bit of the same. August, we kind of have winter fatigue. We're a little lazy, fat, unhappy. Spring, we're ready to go. September, we're pumping hard. And then we back into October, we start putting Christmas decorations up. How the hell do you want to build a life and a business on May and September with all the distractions in between? So make sure you're there on the 21st of November. Trevor and I will be very honest with you, brutally so, for the sole purpose that you have a really exciting 2025 planned, set in stone, ready to go, and you can go enjoy yourself over the festive period and come back and hit it hard from January, so that you finally have that business that's profitable and commercially successful and viable and will work without you. So looking forward to that session.
Stunning. Harry, thanks again for the time and the reality check. I'll see you actually in Cape Town in 2 weeks' time. I'll be down shortly, and then look forward to welcoming you back to Durban in November. And those of you that are watching, thanks for making the time. I hope it was useful reality check, and reach out if you want to know more about the event coming up. There'll be a link somewhere up, down, left or right. There'll be a button somewhere that you can find out more. But aside from that, have a great week, everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you.